What is going on, fam? Welcome to our show today. Today we're talking about nutrition. I hope you guys actually had a good weekend. So I took a bit of a rest day last week. I think this was hey Melly, what's good? How you doing? How you doing? Thanks for joining. So last week I took a rest day. I think the last 2 days of the week I didn't stream, but today we are talking about the best cooking methods to lose weight and specifically 60 pounds in 6 months. And this is a true tested method. And this stream is actually something that I've actually personally like I've done and something that I've documented through my journey as well. And one of the things that I did was to actually record and track what I did to actually lose weight. And this was, oh, yeah. So this was like end of 2023 to I think about, yeah, like mid 2020, 2025. And so today I really want to just share with you, excuse me, I just had some food here, but I just want to share with you some of the insights and some of the things that people tend to overlook because it's one thing to know the food to eat, the healthy food to eat, and it's another thing to understand how to prepare that food because the preparation can make or break your diet. And I think a lot of people tend to underestimate the importance of preparation for your diet, for your food, or any meal that you're having. How it's cooked matters more than you realize. And I've actually come across a lot of people that tell me that, hey Nate, like I've been eating healthy, but I still can't lose weight. And one of the things that I tend to ask, it's like, okay, are you tracking your food? How many calories are you having? And I ask that question just to understand, like, okay, not because the number really matters, but I ask it to understand, like, if this person is actually being conscious about what they're doing and the things that they're doing in terms of their diet. So when I ask them, okay, what's the calories? How many calories are you eating in a day? And the moment someone tells me, like, I eat maybe one meal a day and I eat healthy, but I'm still not losing weight, I'm always wondering, like, okay, so are you tracking? How do you know that you're not eating unhealthy food? Because there's a misconception when it comes to eating healthy that you just pick the healthy food, and the moment you cook that healthy food, then automatically you're going to lose weight. But what people tend to overlook is to really understand, like, okay, how do I actually cook the meal and prepare it to be healthy? Because I could even argue and say, hey, preparation is more important than the food that you actually eat. Because at the end of the day, most of the fast food that we eat is technically what we consider healthy food. Let's say, for example, like potatoes. Potatoes are healthy on their own, but the moment you put them in fat, in cooking oil, it turns into something different. So fries, baked potato, those are two different things. So by the end of today's stream, I want to really help you understand where you might be falling off and why you might not be seeing results, and what's the extra nudge that you need to just maybe tweak just a little bit. Because a lot of times it's not like people don't know what to do. I mean, they kind of know what to do. So they have an idea. But sometimes, as they say, like the devil's in the detail. But sometimes it's just about tweaking that one or two things just to really dial things in. Because I've realized that even for myself, like when I hit a plateau in my own training or like whatever goal that I'm working towards, I've probably done most of the heavy lifting and the foundation is there. But then there's just that one thing that you just need to tweak a little bit. And by tweaking that thing just a little bit, it just makes all the difference. And that's what allows you to actually get to your goal. So today's stream, like I really want to help you understand this. And I today I've got the presentation, I've got the slides, And as always, like we really want to focus on also just going back to what our faith says and just like scripture. So the first thing that we want to understand is, what does scripture say about food? Right. So we've got two instances in scripture where God tells us what we should eat. So in the other streams that we talked about, like the Bible diet, we talked about some of the verses, we looked at some of the specific foods where they're mentioned in the Bible. And this specific verse, it talks about having like the plant bearing seeds, the herbs, the veggies, the fruit, and yeah, any vegetation to be food for us. And later on, after the flood, this is before the flood, and then after the flood, God gives us the animals as food as well. And then we're given more specifics on what type of animals to eat and what animals we should avoid. So really, like how food is designed for our bodies is meant to nourish us. And by nourish us, it means that the purpose for food is to give us good health, give us energy, and to provide us clarity and things that allow us to continuously do God's work. So, which requires us to steward our bodies and also steward our environments and also worship God and live our purpose. So, whatever you do for work, whatever you do in terms of, or whatever roles that you have, like as a parent or as an aunt, uncle, grandparent, whatever it is, like we've been given the food to nourish us so that we can actually participate in communion with other believers and with other people around us. And whether it's you going out to do like missionary work or any sort of like service that you're providing to your community, for you to be doing that, and in order for you to go and do that, you need energy. You need to have food in your body. You need to know that, okay, I'm eating healthy and my body is fueled the right way, and the foods that we're eating are not spiking our insulin, and the foods that we're eating are not causing us to have risk of disease, whether it's like diabetes, whether it's cancer, could be blood pressure, all of those conditions that most people struggle with and suffer from today, because part of it is the way that God intended for us to live is that our food just with nature is meant to nourish us, and by nourishing us it's also fighting against disease, against viruses, because there is design and intelligence in how God designed the fruits and the plants and the veggies, because they provide us with the micronutrients to really help us be healthy and live a healthy life. So that's one of the most important things for us to really take note. And the moment we take note of that, we now are able to understand, like, okay, so for us, we know the food to eat, but what kind of preparation am I going to make? Am I going to do to actually help with eating this food so that it tastes good? Because a lot of people are like, okay, I need the food to taste good, right? So yes, the food needs to taste good, but it's also important to understand that not everything is meant to be sweet or salty and savory, because some foods we eat them because they have a purpose, and there's a purpose that God designed that food. Like ginger, I don't like ginger, but I drink it like, occasionally, like the ginger juice. But I recognize that's more like medicine, natural medicine. And one of the things that we can talk about eventually is more of how we have, the pharmaceutical companies, right? They take some of these ingredients for their drugs from nature. And because they're commercializing it, then they add more things so that they can sort of like uh, maximize the ingredients, and also add things so that the medicine also lasts for a long time. They can sell it to more people, right? So there's a capitalism, commercial um, interests in those companies. So besides that, besides us going through that, like I just want to get us to look here. So right now, as we're looking at this, right? So this was my own transformation. So right here on the left side, I was weighing roughly about 200 pounds. So this was like at the peak of my bulk. And here I was weighing around 140 pounds, like 145, between 145 to 145 to 140. So this was me. This was a transformation that I did. And this was about, yeah, roughly about, now it's almost like 2 years. So with this, I also documented the process. So I'm just going to show you exactly how this looked. So this is the graph for 1 year. And within this 1 year period, I I actually dropped my weight. I actually gained up to 200 and then I dropped to 160. I guess you can see this, right? So I think you should be able to see this. Let's see. Yeah, so this was like 162 in July. And this doesn't really show exactly where it is, but let's see. So this would have been March. Yeah, so March, that's when I started my cut. And then this is July. So I had 2 more months. And then by the 2 month mark, like I dropped to about 140. And then I also came and tracked. So this was kind of like March, from March to June. And then so I dropped the weight. So it was dropping roughly about like 2%, 2.5 pounds per month, per week, sorry, per week. And yeah, so then when I look here, so that's just the weight, right? And then muscle mass. So I had some muscle mass, so which is good because when you're trying to lose weight, naturally you're going to lose some muscle, right? When you're cutting down. And when you're cutting down to lose some weight, you can just keep all the muscle. Like some of it is going to go, but you want to keep as much as possible. So for me, right here within this period that I was cutting, right from where I started, I still managed to maintain a decent amount of muscle. Because let's say if I'm looking at this period here, like in a 3 month period, I only lost like minus 3.2 pounds of muscle. So pretty good. I would say that's pretty good. And a weekly rate of like zero point 0.2. So there was more fat that I was burning and more weight that I was losing, which I also managed to preserve most of my muscle. So this also comes down to your training and your diet, mainly your diet. Because if you don't eat enough protein, your muscles will probably just go, right? So you're going to have that sort of like softer look. But if you're eating a lot of protein at the same time, you're going to have that, definition as you cut, and you're still going to look full. But if you just cut your protein, it's not going to really help you as much. So you want to make sure that your diet is well adjusted for your goals. And this is something that I've also talked about in the other streams and the other videos where I talked about like what to eat. I shared like some of the videos, some of the meals that I was having. So you can check to see the exact meals that I was having as well, and also how to track your food. So like the how to use my fitness pal, those videos are there. You can check those out. And yeah, so like for me, this was like the progress that I made. And now over here, I had, let's see, let's come back here. Okay. Okay. So the thing that I just talked about is that, a lot of people, a lot of times we try and focus on, okay, what are the foods that we're supposed to eat, right? So we know like, okay, we have to eat healthy food. The calories matter, the protein matters, the carbs matter. But sometimes we overlook how we cook the food, because how we cook the food makes the biggest difference. And a lot of people, when I talk to them, when they say like, "Hey, like I'm not able to lose weight," it's because they're not. paying attention to how they're cooking their food. And now, with more research, more studies, they also show like the way that we cook our food matters a lot. And the types of utensils that we use, the types of pots that we use, the types of metals that we use, because when you heat stuff, it also changes and sort of lets out certain things, like if there's plastic. So that plastic can actually leach, and depending on, yeah, so depending on what you're using, and there's like things like what's this, Teflon? Yeah, Teflon, like those non-stick pans. So there's a lot of research and sort of like different things that people think about when they're talking about like, okay, how to cook. So one of the things that are very important that we know, like things like ceramic, glass, those things are fine. Those things are good for in terms of like material to use for cooking. And one of the things, I mean, we can talk about that later on, but one of the things that people tend to want and tend to desire is taste. So the taste of food matters to a lot of people. And things like sauces, spices, types of like different oils that they use because they sort of add flavor to food. So at times when people say like, okay, I'm eating healthy, but I'm not losing weight, I'm like, okay, let's figure out like what the problem is. Because if you don't know how much you're eating in terms of calories, and you don't know how to track, you don't know what you're doing, most likely you're going to lose the battle because you're not taking time to actually understand, like, okay, if I'm going to try and lose, let's say, 60 pounds, how much am I supposed to eat? Right? Because initially, let's say the first 40 pounds might be easy to lose. But if you don't actually pay attention to how you're cooking, the last bit of your journey is going to be much, much, much more difficult than you would want it to be. So you actually need to understand that, okay, once you get to like, 60, 80% of the way, you might have to start adjusting some things. And that's when, like, your cooking methods matter more. And especially if you're like changing your lifestyle from like eating processed foods and fast food. So just cooking from home is good. But then it gets to a point where even if you're cooking from home, how you cook your food now matters because now you might be adding hidden calories in your food. So we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to this, right? So one of the things that, people do is or overlook is that when they eat food, for example, there are things that are called like seed oils. So the different types of oils, like your canola and some of the restaurant oils. Like if you've seen like a restaurant, like in the kitchen, how they cook, they have those big pans or like deep frying pans where they just like soak like fries, for example, and they just soak it and then they just pull them out. And that oil is hot and they dip so many things in that oil, and what you find is that your food changes the moment you cook it in a certain way. So if you deep fry your food, it changes. So the structure of your food, like the actual biological structure of your food, it changes, just like protein. Depending on how high the heat is, your protein denatures, and essentially like the function of your food changes depending on how you've cooked your food. And that's why you find some people talk about like eating raw food or like juicing, where they try and preserve all the nutrients in, let's say, things like veggies just by juicing it, or like even just like blending the food so that they can eat all the nutrients and take in all the nutrients because they want to preserve the full profile, the nutrition profile of the food. And so by, cooking the food a different way, it might change it. So when you cook food, obviously there's going to be some things that you add to add flavor. So there's, oil, butter, sugar, sauce, and obviously like the frying fat that we talked about. So these are things that we need to really pay attention, because even like, you have a potato and you fry it, the moment you take it out, like as you, if you dipped it in there, let's say if the potato was like maybe 200 calories. When you take it out, it might be like 400 calories, right? Because your fat, again, has 1 gram of fat, has about 9 calories. And for your potato, 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories. So already when you dip it in, like you take it out, it's easy to double the calories just by using fat because you don't know how much fat is going to get soaked into that potato and you don't know, right? So that's why it's important to pay attention to the cooking method that you use. Even if it's fries at home, when you deep fry it at home, it's not just in restaurants. So that's the thing that we need to understand that a meal, even though we call it like healthy food, a healthy food option, sometimes that healthy food option can still not be good for you if you're trying to lose weight because it's packed with hidden calories. So these are things that we need to understand, especially like when we talk about like the calories, like why does it matter so much? Right? So the fat, remember, the fat is more than double the calories of carbs. So that matters, and you need to pay attention to what you're using to cook. And then the one thing that people, tend to think is if I think this is what we've been talking about, right? So it's not always going to be automatic that your food is healthy just by the nature of like where you got it, even if you get it from a healthy food store it's still fine. So what happens, the benefit to that is if you get it from a healthy food store, it's better than getting fast food for sure. Way, 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 way better than that. So when you get it from like a healthy food store, at least you know that you're getting some of the nutritious foods and the nutrients in the food. But now you need to preserve that profile of the food because you don't want to get into a situation where you're like, well, I'm eating healthy, but nothing is happening. I'm not losing weight, or I still feel like I don't have energy. Because when you eat healthy, you're supposed to have better energy. So you need to pay attention to that and then realize that, okay, when you do have the healthy food, are you planning your meals? Are you preparing the meals so that you have like your meals planned out? And have you cooked them in a way that you can store them, preserve them? Let's say if you're going to put it in your fridge, right? Can you cook it well enough to put it in the fridge? So that's the one misconception that people think when they approach their food and their diet, when they're eating healthy or starting out at least, they don't pay attention to how they cook. And one of the things that happens when someone does that, they start wondering, like, okay, so I'm eating healthy. Like, I've followed this diet plan. It tells me, okay, I'm supposed to eat this food. These are the healthy food options that I need to eat. But it's not working, right? So they start blaming themselves and blaming themselves, wondering, like, okay, so I'm I'm not losing weight. Why am I not losing weight? And you start thinking that you don't have discipline. And you start thinking, like, okay, I'm not progressing because there's something wrong with me, or my scale is broken, or my metabolism is broken. No, it's not that. It's just that there's a hidden amount of calories in the food that you're eating, right? So the things that we need to pay attention is the oil, the sauces, the fried food, and sugary drinks. Because you also don't want to eat a lot of your calories. I mean, drink them more specifically. So some drinks have a lot of calories. So let's say, for example, if you're talking about like soft drinks, your Cokes, unless if you're having something like Coke Zero and or like a diet soda, but those drinks sometimes they're also not good for you. Depending, you have to now pay attention to the ingredients. But if you have like sugary drinks that are not like juice, if you're having sweet stuff, if it's like something that you need to drink, it's good, it's better to drink juice, but also juice that's not like packed with a ton of like ingredients. If you can get like pure 100% juice, that's the healthiest option that you should opt for and go for, because the moment you start drinking juice, and drinking anything that's sugary. I mean, like I still enjoy like milkshakes here and there, but the main thing is like if part of your daily diet includes like drinking any sort of like drink or juice or anything like that, you have to pay attention to like amount of sugar that's in your drink. And sometimes like I've seen people who drink those coffees or like Starbucks drinks, and they pack them with like a ton of sugar. Like you have your creams, you have your what's that, like the frap, right? You have the cream, the whipped cream, all of that. So like cream, as in like the milk cream type of cream, and then you have like the whipped cream, right? So people pack it with so many things, and so that also adds a lot of calories, because that drink could easily be like 500 calories, right? Those with the fraps with the whipped cream, so those ones can have high calorie content. So slow fat loss does not always mean that your body is broken. That's the thing that you need to understand. And your hidden calories will stall your progress, and the preparation methods will erase your deficit, because you're supposed to be in a caloric deficit. Your calories should be less than what you use in a day, the calories that you eat. So should be less than the amount of weight, I mean, less than the amount of energy that you use in a day. So there has to be a difference. So, which means that, depending on how much you're trying to lose, you might experience a bit of, low energy at some points. So that's why it's important to time your meals throughout the day, so that you actually have energy to sustain you. Because if you struggle to lose weight because you're like, okay, I've got low energy, okay, like I can't do this, you might be timing your meals wrong. So you have to time your meals so that when you need the most energy, that's when you have your meals. Like at least like an hour and a half to 2 hours, then you can have your meal. So you want to time your meal so that your energy is sustained throughout the day. So, sometimes it's not about you, your discipline. It's not a problem that you have as a person, but it's just the amount of calories that you're having that are hidden because you weren't paying attention to those. So once you figure that out, it's going to be easy for you to actually sustain and then just keep going, because you figured out like, okay, what is actually going on, right? So that's important for us to really understand, and just make sure that we're not beating ourselves too much, because when you beat yourself too much, you now lose your motivation, and realize that it's not about you. It's just a matter of you making sure that you're tracking and seeing where you might be missing things, right? So, the other thing is that people sometimes tend to be lazy, and they say that cooking is too hard. And, there's no time to cook. So they get easy takeout, they've got a messy kitchen, and there's just stress. So like planning the meals is even hard. So cooking in itself should be something that we can, build into our schedules, because that is the difference between someone who manages to lose weight, right? Because if you're trying to lose weight, let's say 60 pounds in 6 months, that's a very clear target, because that target gives you like a specific amount, because that's 60 pounds, right? That's 60 pounds, one, and you have a time period that you're giving yourself. So now you have 6 months. So because you set your target to 60 pounds in 6 months, we can break it down. We can now say, okay, so 60 divided by 6. So that's 10. So, which means every month you have to lose 10 pounds. And for you to lose 10 pounds now, every month, that means that every week, let's say 4 weeks, right? Every week you have to lose 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds. Let's call it that. And 2.5 pounds, that's a bit aggressive. Let me put it this way. That's a bit aggressive. For some people, depending on your lifestyle, maybe you want to go 1.5 to 2, right? So for me, I've been doing this for a long time. So I did it. I had a plan. I just followed it. I just went step by step and just followed it, right? So the progress was very steady, it was very predictable, and I knew exactly what I was doing. So for some people, it might be different. So you need to understand, like, okay, for you specifically, what is it that you're aiming for? Maybe you don't want to lose the full 60 pounds. Maybe you just want to lose 40 pounds. Maybe you want to lose 30 pounds. But what is it that you want to lose? And then figure out, like, okay, based on what I want to lose, how long does that take me? Right? When you understand that time period, like, okay, it's going to take me 6 months. Okay, it's going to take me 4 months. Now you think about it, like, okay, so every week I have to make some choices in terms of like meal prep, because now you have to choose your protein, you have to choose your veggies, right? Your protein, your fiber. You have to make sure that those two things are prioritized in your diet. Those two things. And because your fiber, the key thing that people miss sometimes is that fiber is so important, because your fiber is what actually helps you reduce some of that gut that you have, like the weight that you have in your gut, and also cleanse your intestines and move some of that waste that wasn't moving. And that makes you feel lighter, that motivates you. And when that waste comes out, when you step on the scale, you feel lighter just by adding more fiber to your diet. Because some people, they've done some research to see, like, okay, the people with big bellies, it shows that sometimes their digestion is not working, it's not functioning, the pipes are not moving, so they have to move the pipes so that things leave the body, because some people store food inside them for like maybe 6 months, and that food is still inside and it hasn't moved. They're not using the washroom as much as they should. So those are the things that we need to actually start thinking about when we're talking about, like, okay, I want to reach this goal, because sometimes you think that, okay, it's just the diet, but just including something like fiber can actually make a big difference. So we need to make sure that that's in the diet. And by doing that, we have to now understand, like, okay, the types of food that we're making, how are we making this food? And when you stick with the cooking method, you get used to it. You just build it into your daily routine. And then it's just now a habit that you follow, right? You repeat it over and over and over, because healthy does not need to be complicated, right? You can just repeat it over and over. And convenience also does not have to destroy health. So the repeatable pattern is what makes it easier for you. So simple preparation will beat perfect cooking, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be like Gordon Ramsay to cook food. I would argue that sometimes he cooks food that actually doesn't help your health. So, if you're trying to follow like some of the foodies who cook like great tasting food, because I've seen some of those videos where like, oh, someone just makes some food that just like, oh, you just know that that food just tastes good because they like, soak it in so much sauce, or maybe they fry it, or they do these recipes. Like I've seen those on like Instagram, which just makes you just want to eat that food. And like it's some of it is like healthy, I won't lie, but if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to get to that point where you like really dial it in, the last bit of your weight loss journey is usually the hardest. And this is the hardest part that if you don't pay attention to, it's going to be hard to lose that last 10, 20 pounds. So I recommend, like, close off Instagram. Don't follow those foodies who are like eating those or cooking those meals, because it'll just make you just desire that, right? Because part of food, it's like the presentation, the preparation of it makes it appealing for you to want to eat it, right? So even if you're that person, right, like you can think about like very neat ways on how to prepare your food and present your food if you're someone who likes to cook a lot. So for some people, they just like, okay, I just need to meal prep and just eat the food. I don't care about the preparation. I don't care too much about, like, okay, does this food have too many sauces or anything? They're just eating it for energy and for health. Because understanding why we eat food is one of the most important things. Because when you understand that, you realize that, okay, like even if you don't have time, you can still have like meals that you prep that are easy to go that you can store and put in your fridge. And you also understand like okay, even if I have like a messy kitchen, like what do I do after cooking? Maybe you meal prep once a week, and then you know like your cooking stuff is done, you wash your dishes, they're good, and then throughout the week you're just heating your food. You just have like your pan that you like put your food on the stove, and then boom, done. Right, so that's what you want to get used to, and just building that in. And then like I said, like the thing that we need to understand is that the calories, again, like I gave you that example of deep frying, because this is what makes the difference. Because again, like some food, when you fry them, they absorb a lot of cooking oil, and that oil will increase the energy density. This is the calories that I was talking about, right? So the texture that you're looking for, and let's say for example with the crispiness, the fries, right, that's coming at a cost, because if you've eaten some fries, like it can get soggy and they can hold a lot of fat when you deep fry them. And same thing applies with your meat. That's the same thing. So you want to understand like, okay, how do I actually eat my food? So I'm going to give you an example right here, and to show you the difference, why it's so important for us to look at this, right? So this bottle here is olive oil. This is olive oil. This is olive oil. These two are olive oil, right? So now what I want to show you is that this bottle of olive oil, you can see that that's 80 calories, right? So that's 80 calories. And you have 9 grams of fat, right? So that's 80 grams. And then this is a spray for olive oil. This is like an olive oil spray. And look at that. Right. So this is 0 calories, right? And the measurement, it's zero because you're using about zero point 0.5 grams, which is about half a second of spraying on a pan. So this is less calories than this, right? These are both oils that you can use for cooking, but one is 0 calories for half a second, or like zero point 0.5 grams, and this one is 80 calories. So that's per, let's say, 10 milliliters, that's about like a tablespoon, right? So that's the difference. So when you choose what you use to cook with, it matters, and how you cook matters, because this is like a pan spray so that your food doesn't stick. So one of the things is that when you're thinking about like oils, things like oils, you use them for like cooking, for example, so that your food doesn't stick to the pan, for starters, and sometimes you just give it a bit of flavor. And some of these, right, these oils, you don't have to always cook everything with like a lot of oil. You can opt for like a spray, which you can spray on your pan, which won't add calories, but you still cook. You can cook a full egg with this, right? For example, if you're going to fry an egg, you can use this instead of this. Because if you fry an egg with this, probably you're going to put like about a tablespoon, but this is a spray, and it's just spraying just enough for you to be able to fry. And so when you do that and use this, you're going to have less calories in your diet than doing this. So that makes a difference, because that 80 calories, when you add it up, right, even like when you're baking, when you're putting stuff in the oven, you can just spray, because in a day, like this big one here, when you're using when you're using it to cook every meal, let's say for example, you might find that in a day, if you're making a meal every single time, every single day, you might find that in a day you're eating Maybe that's 80 times 3, so about 240 calories just from like this oil, right? Whereas you can just spray your food, maybe you might hit like 5 calories, for example. So if you're using a lot. So that's the difference, right, in terms of cooking. So you have to pay attention to like the method that you use for cooking, because it's easy for this one, the oil one, like the liquid, to just pour it in into a pan and then just deep fry it. But then with this one, you just spray it and then cook, just, make it taste good. You can still get it to be crispy, get a bit of that texture. So these are different ways that you can like overcome the hurdle of adding too much oil or not understanding how much oil to add. So this is what I would, recommend if you're trying to get that, last bit of weight off. It's like, okay, start thinking about such options for frying if you like to fry your food instead of like pouring oil. And if you're using oil, you're like, okay, I don't want to use this. Or if you don't have it available, even if you just have oil at home, like I've seen people who just pour it in, right? It's better for you to take a spoon and then use it to measure how much you're adding into your pan. And sometimes different oils will have, oh, different oils depending on the package, right? Some will have like this, I don't know what you call this, a spout, I guess, where you can like drip it slowly and you don't over pour it. So that's something that you can, look into so that you're not using too much oil, because this is where people get lost. Or in, or the sources. The sources might be another place, because the source is another trap. Right, because someone might say, like, okay, I'm eating healthy. I've got a salad here. I'm eating healthy. I've got a salad. I eat salads only. I've also heard that one. I eat salad and I'm not losing weight. How come I'm not losing weight? Because they're overlooking this, right? So you've got your cream sauces, you've got your butter, you've got your restaurant marinades, you've got your olive oil, and you've got your sugary dressings. So most people are not even paying attention to like realizing like, okay, how much does a sauce add to my meal? And you might be mistaken, because if you don't track this, like you might be adding like an additional 100 to 200 calories just by adding sauce to your salad, even though you're like, okay, I'm eating healthy. But how much sauce are you adding? And it's not to say like don't use sauces. I would say like er, very like check to see like, okay, how many calories are in this sauce? First of all, that'll be the first thing. Check, because now there are people who are making like low calorie sauces. I've seen like hot sauce usually has like almost no calories as well. So hot sauce might be a good option, or like those Nando's sauces, not the Perinaise. The ones when you start getting into like mayonnaise, Perinaise, that sort of thing, you start adding a bit of the extra creamy sauces. So you're adding more calories to those. So you want to check for like the ones that are like more like water based, not like cream based or like milk based. You want to stay away from those, or like butter based. Those ones might add a bit more, or like vinegar based. Vinegar based is another good one, because vinegar has low calories. So like water based, vinegar based. I think that's a better word for those ones. So make sure that the dressing that you use doesn't have those extra calories. So you want to check and see, okay. And then additives. The other thing that people miss is additives, because the additives, what happens is that when you find that, some of the foods that are made these days, they are creating convenience for us. And like whether it's like frozen food, takeout, fast food, packaged snacks, they usually add like sugars, they add a bit more fat, salt, and additives, because those things, they sort of, I don't know, they figured out the formula to like hack our brains and drive our dopamine response. Because when you taste some of that food, you're like, oh, I want some of that. I want to eat it again. I want to eat it again. I want to eat it again. And because we're not paying attention to what's in the food, we're not being conscious and aware. It's easy for them to just trap us, to just pull us in. Because the moment we just have that convenience, it means that it's coming at a cost. And what's that cost? It means that we're now consumers of these foods because they want us to come back, right? They don't just make food like, they're making a meal a meal from scratch and making a meal for their family. These companies are also making food so that you keep coming back because you're a customer. And for a company, they want to keep you coming back. So they make it more addictive, right? So they understand the brain chemistry. They understand how you respond to food, how your body responds to food. So you really have to really think about like, okay, so my body right now feels like it's hungry. It wants to eat. And I had that meal before and I feel like I want it now, right? So if you don't have meals prepared at home already, you realize that you are likely going to just opt for that same convenience and get that food, whether it's like takeout, fast food, or anything like that. You might end up going to get that food. So these foods are what we call hyperpalatable foods. And what you have to do is now train your own palate to transform it so that you're not craving these foods, because people tend to think that like that's just my appetite, that's what I like, that's just my palate, that's how my palate is, and I can't do anything about it. But that's a lie, because you can train your palate on different types of foods that you end up enjoying. Because what happens sometimes is that we associate a taste, a smell with something. And that association that we make with that is what drives our action. So when you associate, like for me personally, like I had a bad experience when I was growing up with like custard. So I felt like I wanted to puke. I think it was like when I was in, yeah, I think it was like, yeah, I was probably like young and like nursery or something. And I think they made the custard, and I think it was like cold. I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't made very, very well. And when I had that custard, I, for whatever reason, that custard, I don't know, like I can't remember if I ended up puking or something, but I didn't enjoy it, right? And since then, I kept on saying like I don't like custard because growing up, I already had that association with the taste of custard. So the association that we make between the taste and what it means to us will determine our palates as well as we grow older. So your palate is something that you can taste when you understand, like, okay, what are you associating it with? Because people tend to now emotionally eat because they associate a certain taste with a certain emotion. And when you associate a certain emotion with certain foods, when you feel like, oh, I feel stressed. Okay, I want to feel better. So, for me to feel better, I need to eat that food because it's going to give me this feeling. So, it's going to make me feel better, right? So, that association already that you've made in your brain is what keeps you in that place where you're eating emotionally. So, you have to realize that, some of the foods that we call conveniences, there's a lot of research that they've put in for them to understand, like, okay, if this person eats X amount of food or X amount of this fry or whatever it is that you like, this person is going to come back. Or maybe let's just get them to eat 5 grams, 10 grams on average, and it's too much for them, right? But they feel good, they feel like they have a lot of energy. So there's a lot of like research and chemistry that they do for us to keep on coming back for more. So that's something that we have to pay attention to. And then when we pay attention to that, we will see that over time, we have associated that food with something else that's different, which shows us that this food was created and designed by someone who doesn't have my best interest. They want to keep me trapped. They want to keep me stuck and overweight. They don't care about my health. They want me to end up gaining weight where I have diabetes, where I have blood pressure, where I have maybe cancer or a heart attack. And that same person likely has a company and owns the drug company. Because they own the drug company, it means that they now want me to be their client, a patient that comes back for more drugs for me to feel better now. Because it's no longer food that's making me feel better, but I now need the drugs to help me feel better. So because there's that association, because that's the reality of it, right? Like with these big companies, because they end up just owning everything. So because they own everything, they don't really care about you as much because they create the problem first. After they create the problem, they provide you a solution to the problem that they created. That's literally how it works with these big companies, right? So they create the problem, then they provide you the solution, but they don't appear as if they're the same person. They don't appear as if they're the same person because if they do appear as the same person, they don't have a market, they don't have a business. So it's like just stop creating the problem and then everything else goes away, right? But they don't want that. So when you start opening up your eyes to understand that and realize that, okay, I have to make a better choice because again, it's your free will. Like the things that they make, they're there. It's not like, I mean, technically, I think it should be illegal, but i- are they really breaking the law that they'll get in jail or go to court or prison? I think it's much more complicated with that, but we have to take control and make better choices for ourselves and understand that we cannot control everything else outside of us, but what we can control is everything that we have on the inside. Because again, like when we look at scripture, God is telling us, and, scripture tells us that our battle is not, against flesh and blood, but it's the rulers, the dark forces and dark powers, the evil spirits of this dark world. I'm not calling these people, what who they are, but they know themselves, and you should know them who they are. So when you understand that, you realize that our fight, our battle is against people who don't want the best for us, who don't want the best for our health, biblically speaking, in a faith centered way, in a faith understanding of what is going on when it comes to our food and when it comes to our diet, because they are waging war on us. We think that it's just, maybe a spiritual battle that's like happening in the spiritual realm. Yes, that is true. But they also wage war against us physically. That is why God also tells us to honor our bodies in Corinthians, to honor our bodies, because it is the temple of God. We should not do things that hurt that hurt our bodies. So we have to pay attention to this. We have to pay attention because the battle is spiritual as much as it is physical. Because when you realize that, okay, now this company is against me, right? When you've understood that from a spiritual level and from a physical level, you now understand, like, okay, where are you associating this food with, right? It's kind of like drugs, for example, right? Like people who take, some of these drugs, right? Uh, so when they take drugs, they become addicted to drugs, even like alcohol, right? That is a drug. So they become addicted. It's the same thing when it comes to food. It's just that people don't talk about it as much, or people don't want to bring awareness to it as much. But these companies are also bringing us harm, increasing the risk of us gaining cancer, increasing the risk of us having diabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, the risk of us losing our fertility as as a population, because now there's people saying that okay, the world population is going down, but people are saying fertility rates are low. So you start to wonder, like, okay, is there someone that's had a plan all along to reduce fertility because they think that the world population is too big, it's too large? So some of these things, when you start thinking about them and realizing, like, okay, what is really going on, you start to realize that no, these people don't want the best for me. So that is the part that we have to really contend with. And that is the foundation for us to understand and build a base from. And then that way we can associate what we feel when we eat those foods. Say, hey, like this food, yeah, it tastes good, but this is a drug. This is something that's supposed to get me to stay addicted or remain addicted. I'm not saying like don't have like the occasional fast food, your cheat meal or cheat day, whatever it is. Like you can still have like whatever you want to eat, right? But what I'm saying is we should not then end up opting for convenience all the time. It should be like 80-20, right? 20% go have that food. Okay, fine, great. But that's the part where you have to be consistent. For you to be able to enjoy that, you have to be consistent for 80% of the time. And then you just let up for the 20%. Because we're bombarded with some of these foods all the time. Maybe you go out to a restaurant, you can't really keep away from that food, right? But you've just gone to a restaurant, you're with your friends. It's not to say like restrict yourself and don't eat that food, but it's to understand how to eat it, in what context. And then you're not attaching your emotions to that food. Because when you attach your emotions to that food and associate all the positive feelings to that food, that is the trap, because they've already hijacked your brain and already hijacked the dopamine receptors in your brain. So they have scientists that have figured out the formula. So that's what we need to understand. So, part of that, it's like, which ties into this, is that we have to realize that okay, between the two things, if you have takeout, because there's also like meal planning services, that's a good way to actually work around this. If you're someone who's like, okay, I don't know how to eat, I don't have time, they also like meal planning services. I'm sure like in your area you can find them regardless of where you are. If you find someone, or you can find someone who's like a chef who can make meals for you, because there are people who are willing to actually cook for people and design these. I mean, not necessarily them designing, but if you give them like a meal plan and say, hey, I want to eat these meals, this is what I need you to make for me every single day. There are people who actually, and are willing to actually make those meals for you and actually cook for you. So it's a matter of like you personally actually seeking those people. If you're like, okay, I don't have time, and I tend to eat late at night, I eat, you know, uh, when I just have time. Maybe you skip meals, like it's so chaotic, right? So you need to understand that you need to have like, your grocery list, you do your groceries, you have your protein, you have your veggies, you have your carbs, and then you have your meal prep, and then you store it. So meal prep is one of the best ways for you to have like a structure to your diet, to your eating. Because without the meal prep, you're going to be left guessing. It's like, okay, how much did I eat today? How much did I eat tomorrow? How much did I eat yesterday or the other day? And it's going to be hard for you to understand if you're making progress or not. So you need to have structure around your meals to know, like, okay, I eat in the morning, I eat in the afternoon, then I eat at night. And then your body adapts to that pattern. And then you now know, like, okay, I eat before this activity. Okay, I eat after this activity. So those are the things that you want to start thinking about and start understanding that, okay, if you do these things, it will actually help you get results and achieve more, even in your work, even with your relationships, and even at the gym, your progress at the gym, you'll have more energy. So these are things that we have to really take into account. So don't just depend on like motivation and just say, okay, I'll do it when I feel good. It's not good enough. So we want to make sure that we have structure and we build the plans so that we have, a structure to say Monday to Thursday to Friday. And then maybe you have the one day where you just let loose. You just be like, okay, I'm just going to order something and then you eat whatever you want to eat. But it has to be intentional. It can be, random. This day, that day, this day, that day. You want to have some structure to it. And when you do that, it will give you results. So, like I said, this is like an old picture. Let me put it that way. But this is my meal plan back in the day. So this was, I've got some rice, brown rice. I've got broccoli. I've got ground beef, and then I had my potatoes. I just boiled my potatoes and then I had my chicken breast. So this meal was like, I mean, this is like a staple. This was like my bodybuilding days. And this is like bulking because your ground beef has a bit more fat to it. It's protein, so it has a bit more fat. And typically, with something like ground beef, I wouldn't even put oil in it because it has a lot of fat already. So this is like ground beef, and then sometimes I just put it in the oven, and then it just cooks in the oven, and then yeah, and then I just take it out, and then I add spices. So I would add spices. I recommend spices. If you're someone who's like, okay, Nate, this sounds great, but I need food to taste good. Get spices. Get spices, and most spices don't have a ton of calories. The thing that you might be worried about is sodium, but also with sodium, you have to be careful because there is a misconception. People say that sodium is not good for you, but it's actually also an electrolyte where your body needs it. But if you have a specific condition, you can consult your doctor how much sodium you can have because I know some people they might have like uh edema and they have like inflammation and sometimes they have to reduce their sodium or they have blood pressure, high blood pressure, so they have to reduce it for them. So those are different situations, but you can consult your doctor if you have any concerns. But generally, this would be like a meal plan for like the week, and I would have these meals. So I already know, like, okay, this lunchbox, I'm taking this lunchbox, I'm taking that lunchbox, and I'm having a potato, chicken breast. Kind of boring, just the potato only. So I have like some meals that I look forward to, and some meals that I wouldn't look forward to. But generally, right, like I would, spice up my meats. My meats will be tasting good. And yeah, right now the potatoes are the only ones that don't look that great. And then this is the other one, the other meal. So same thing. And then here I added a bit of like peppers into the meal plan. So this is still bulking. And this is ground beef. And then with some white rice. So you can alternate as long as you're preparing so that you know exactly what you're trying to eat, you'll be fine. It doesn't have to be something like crazy, but it just has to be intentional. It just have to be structure. And then like occasionally like I'll have like some meals, right? Where I just, kind of eat something like let's say get some Five Guys or something. And the other thing that you can do is like, the foods that you eat, depending on the types of foods that you eat. Another way that you can cook is when you're looking at meals is like grilling. So this is like a grilled ribeye and ribeye and tip sirloin. Yeah, ribeye and tip sirloin. And so, like, for me, sometimes, like, I would have, like, a grill just after work and just, like, grill some meats and then just prep my food and then have it ready for me for the rest of the week. So, this is another great way of cooking where you're not adding too much oil to your food. It's just like, okay, it's just your steak. You just throw it on the grill, turn up the heat, whether it's like gas or coal, whatever it is, but make sure that you clean your grill. right? Because sometimes you have those what'd you call that? Like not charcoal, but like the dead stuff, like the burnt stuff on the grills. You want to make it clean as well, because that stuff is also not good for you. Yeah, like chard, like the chard that's on the grill. So when you eat that stuff can also cause things like cancer. Burnt food is not good for you. So remove that, clean the grill, and use the grill after. So this is another way of cooking. So uh, for me, during that period when I was losing weight, right, like the different cuts of meat, like I would change the different cuts of meat based on what my goals were. And so the thing that we really want to boil down is like, okay, what are the best cooking methods for you to lose weight where you're not adding too much to your food? So grilling, obviously, that's one of the things that I just talked about. So when you're cooking your proteins and with minimal added fat. So again, that's one of the favorites. Like even chicken, just grill it. Some chicken, if you have like skin on the chicken, it has that fat that helps you with just like giving the chicken some juice, some flavor. So, and then chicken also like low heat, not too high because you can burn it easy and it's not made and it's not ready and it's not well done in the middle. So you want to cook it nice, steady heat when you're grilling to make sure that it's well done. And then your meats, you want to make them well done. Remember, we don't eat food or meats with lifeblood inside. So you want to make sure that it's well done. And you want to stay away from rare meats. You want to stay away from rare meats. You want to eat well done food that's cooked. Food with no blood. Don't mix milk and blood as well. So like that's cooking methods. And then another option is baking. Like I said, the baking is good, reduces the necessary oils and frying fat. So that's the thing. Like when you're baking stuff, if you need a bit of oil, you can just spray a bit of oil on on the food. All right. So that's one way of doing it. And then the other thing that you can do is using an air fryer. So air fryer is another one of my favorite air fryer because I don't know, it's so convenient. Whoever came up with that is a genius. And yeah, because in air fryer, you marinate your food and then it gives you like different settings that you can put on. And you can just put your food in the air fryer, pull it out, it's done. It's like a mini oven, right? So convenient. So convenient. Mini oven. And yeah, so you can make your veggies, you can make your chicken, you can make your carbs like your potatoes, for example. You can cook it in there. Some people even bake in an air fryer. You can do so much with an air fryer. But it's something that, if you have access to it, and if you don't, at least you still have like the different cooking methods that you can use. And then you have steaming. Steaming is great for like veggies, right? Like your veggies, and like I said, you're preserving your nutrients without adding calories as well. So you're just using like your steaming. So like let's say for example, you cook your veggies. One of the things that I learned from my mom was like you cook your rice, for example. I think you have some of these rice cookers which have like levels where you have your rice on the bottom, and then you have like this layer where you can add your veggies on top, so that as the rice is cooking, your veggies is also being steamed, and you're not boiling, and they're still crispy, and you can tell like okay, this it's soft enough for you to bite and chew, but it's also crispy at the same time. So that's what you want to really opt for when you're looking at like things like veggies, like steaming your veggies, right? You can still bake your veggies, which is still good, and air fry them. And then the other thing is controlled stir fries. So again, with the stir fries, this bad boy is your go-to, right? 0 calories. This is, this option is called PAM, right? This is olive oil, non-stick cooking spray. So that's the main thing, like with the cooking sprays, like you want it to be non-stick. And then when you add the cooking spray, right, it's non-stick. It's easy for you to actually make your meals, and you can actually see like, okay, like, is the food tasting good? Is it burning? Is it not burning? So stir fry is a great way to actually still add some flavor to your food, and you can kind of have that crispy taste where you're like, okay, it's fried, but always, if you're going to use like the oil, if you're going to use the oil, make sure that you're measuring the oil using a spoon so that you know exactly how much you're adding. And then yeah, like it's so important for us to understand like better preparation makes fat loss easier to repeat. So it has to be something that you can repeat on a daily basis. Because if it's something that's hard to repeat on a daily basis, depending on like which cooking method you enjoy, because like you can choose like maybe one, two cooking methods. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything, but you can choose like one or two cooking methods. And when you choose the cooking methods, you will realize and figure out like, okay, for me right now, I want to cook, but I don't have time. What option saves me time? What option gives or adds more taste and flavor to my food? So that's what you want to really understand before you start cooking. It's like, what option is the best? And then when you pick those, you're like thinking to yourself, like, which option can I repeat over and over? Which one's easier for me? So those are the things that you have to think about. And when you think about those things and you understand like, okay, what you can actually use, then you can actually figure out like, okay, I can actually keep on doing this, right? So just keep in mind that you have options. You're not stuck, right? You're not stuck. And so now you have to really, think about this again. Like, okay, so with the way that you're going, like, okay, if you haven't lost the weight that you want to lose, and if you're stuck and you're not sure, like, okay, where exactly you are in your journey and why are you stuck? You want to figure out, like, okay, do you want to stay in the same place and just accept it for what it is? And at that point, like some people give up, but you want to keep on consuming some of the hidden oils, like the seed oils, like heavy sources, impulse meals, calorie overload, random results, chaoticness, like ordering takeout, skipping meals, like just that disorder, dysfunction. Like, do you want to stay in that place and just feel stuck the entire time? Or you want to actually start intentionally preparing your meals in a way that you can have your meals at home with confidence that you're going to reach your goals, and reach your goals in a way that you're very certain, like, okay, if I stall, I can readjust things and get back on track. Because at that point, you can track your food. Like I made videos on like how to track your food, so I'm not going to repeat some of this stuff, but just making sure that you're prioritizing like your protein, your fibers, which is your veggies, and then have your carbs, which you measure as well. And then just having that repeatable structure to your day. And when you have a repeatable structure, it's easier for you to keep on doing. You don't feel like you need to rely on motivation because it's not going to hold you through, but you just have to keep on going. Have a program or like a meal plan that you can repeat over and over, because you have a grocery list, you have your meals. The next thing is that you need to make sure that you understand, like, okay, how exactly am I going to repeat this tomorrow or next week? Because if your time period is 6 months, you need to understand, like, okay, the 6 month period, okay, boom, I'm good. But can I sustain this for 6 months, or what am I doing? Right? Am I just lying to myself? So when you understand this and when you execute on this, then you will be winning. And now, what I want to look at is